first thing I want to introduce you to is identity restructuring. Now, this is a theoretical model for personal transformation and change. And this is everything I have been doing over the last 7 to 10 years, all ready to go, all ready to teach you. Now, let's start here. When I was a kid in elementary school, I used to be bored out of my mind, and I would find these little strings or long strings of yarn or something in the hallway, and I'd bring it into class, and I'd have this long string, and I'd tie a knot in it. And I was bored. So what do you do when you have a string and tie a knot? Well, you tie another knot, right? And you tie another knot, and you tie another knot, and before you know it, you got this big ball of knotted yarn, right? Or this big ball of string. You ever done this with a shoelace? You know, you tie it, you knot it, you knot it, you knot it, then you got this big ball of string in your hand. What I want to suggest to you is that this is what humans do in their psyche. When we are young, when we don't form memories fully, when we don't have the wisdom to make sense of what is happening to us, when we go through struggles, when we go through difficulties, when confusing things happen to us, and yes, of course, when big capital T traumas happen, we write a story in our brain, very similar to tying a knot. And then what happens is we start to see the world a particular way. And so these knots is a metaphor for the stories we tell in our brains. And then these stories become us. They follow us around. They become the way we see the world. One of my favorite quotes, by the way, is a quote. It goes like this: if you see life as a war, you will find battles everywhere, whether they exist or not. Now, how many people do you know like that? What we are doing, you, me, your clients, your patients, we are all carrying around a big ball of knotted yarn in our unconscious that determines how the world shows up for us, how we see ourselves, and our ability to change or not. I call these seed stories, and I call them seed stories because, like a seed, when you plant them into the soil, the roots run deep. And those roots determine everything about what that plant will do and how that plant can grow and what it sees out in the environment and how it's affected and how it's impacted and whether it can be effective in the world or not. What are your seed stories telling you? So what I'm trying to say is that if you look at these Russian nesting dolls, you know what a Russian nesting doll is? If you've ever got a present on Christmas where you got this little small present wrapped into a bit slightly bigger present and a slightly bigger one, and you get this big box, but the gold is down at the very center of that. Well, stories, identity, they give rise to beliefs and feelings, which give rise to choices and actions, which give rise to habits and behaviors. Now think about it. Here's where you're doing your work with your clients and patients. What if you can get right down here, right here in the stories and the identity and the beliefs and feelings, and really get to the core of what's going on with them? Would that be powerful for you or not? Now, the question we have to ask is, why can't people change? Well, this is why people can't change, because they have a story. They are carrying around these old struggles, these old traumas, these old trials, these old tribulations, these old happenings like a ball and chain. And it holds them back. It guides their life silently. There's a great quote by Carl Jung that says, if you do not make the unconscious conscious, it will follow you around and you'll call it fate. And what I would say is, if you don't make the unconscious conscious, it will keep you stuck and you will feel like you are in a struggle. What we do when we are young and things happen to us, we don't have the wisdom that we have as adults. So we write misguided, unconscious decisions about the world. Think about that acronym: misguided, unconscious decisions that we make about the world when we are young. What's the acronym? MUD, M-U-D. We get stuck in the mud. We get stuck with these misguided, unconscious decisions that we didn't even know we made because we made them at 3 years old, 6 years old, 10 years old, 18 years old, right? We didn't have the skills and the understanding, but they stay with us and they follow us around. And not only that, we now know through research that generational trauma follows us around through epigenetic changes from our grandmother, our grandfathers, our ancestors. That also is holding us back. These patterns that repeat again and again and again. You know what I'm talking about. The family patterns, those dysfunctional family patterns that I have, that you have, that your patients have, those things need to be addressed and dealt with. But guess what? Science doesn't have an answer for that. Medicine doesn't have an answer for that. You need to be able to meet your clients, your patients, the people you're training in a way that addresses this. Because if people are going to be successful, they need to realize this new reality of dimensional consciousness. They are not simply the person they are today. They are a conglomeration of their child self, their young teen self, their young adult self, and all the stories and all those misguided, unconscious decisions they made. That's who they are today. And to change that, we have to address that. We need to integrate it. We can't heal from these things. We can't get better if we are tethered to old dysfunctional identities. And here's what's really interesting about this that you know and I know about people. Guess what they do with their identities and beliefs? Do they voluntarily try to change their identities and beliefs? No. What they do is they do everything they can to defend their identity and beliefs instead of dismantling their identity and beliefs. Well, I'm going to show you how to dismantle them in your clients in a healthy way. Now, here's the thing to know. How do you know if you have these things? How do you know if you're dealing with these dysfunctional stories? Well, you're going round and round and round in circles. Repeated patterns, recurrent struggles, stuck emotions. Now, by the way, if you've ever followed me in metabolism, you know that I use this funny little term, HEC, H-E-C, stands for hunger, energy, and cravings, or SHMEC, S-H-M-E-C, stands for sleep, hunger, mood, energy, and cravings. And many of you use this technique to teach your clients and your patients to understand and read their metabolism. Well, how do you read your mental, emotional body? How do you know if you've got repeated patterns, recurrent obstacles, stuck emotions? Well, here's the acronym to teach: AFRAID. AFRAID is an acronym, and it stands for depression, insecurity, anxiety, resistance, frustration, and anger. And by the way, why did I deliver that from bottom to top? The reason why is because these emotions have depth and charge. Depression is very deep and has a very low charge. Anger is very shallow and has a very high charge. And so the idea here is that you can use these emotions when you're talking to your patients and your clients to understand where they might be stuck. Each of these emotions has a hint for you. Depression, the inability to find hope and trust. Insecurity is the inability to believe in oneself. Anxiety is the inability to make a choice or own a choice once it's made. Resistance, the inability to accept what has happened to us and to act. Frustration, the inability to finish what we started and to process. Anger, the inability to let go and move on. And so what we can do is we go, how do I know that I'm stuck? How do I know that my patient is stuck? How do I know that my client is stuck? We know because they have repeated obstacles, recurrent struggles, and stuck emotions. And that tells us. Now, how many people do you know like that? By the way, I have these. You have these. Pretty much everyone you know has these. Now, why do we have them? Because no one ever told us how to deal with suffering. So I'm going to teach you right now. And I'm going to give you a little analogy here about how we should deal with suffering and the way that we don't. First, let's talk about physical pain. Now, if you have physical pain, you know exactly what to do. Say you're in the kitchen, you're cutting vegetables, your knife slips, you cut your finger. What are you going to do? Well, you're going to feel it. And because you feel it, you're going to grab it and squeeze it. Like, right? You're going to grab it and you're going to squeeze it. And then what are you going to do? Well, you're going to inspect it. You're going to be like, oh my God, how deep does this go? What kind of mess did I make? Right? You're going to then have to deal with it, bandage it, clean it, etc. And so in order for you to deal with physical pain, you have to first feel it so that you can then deal with it. And then you have to let it heal. And by the way, yes, you got to put the antibiotic ointment on it, get the stitches out, and do all of those things. But how do you really know that you've healed? You know that next time when you go and cut those vegetables, you're going to remember that scar on your thumb is going to remind you, and you're going to be more careful. You're going to learn the lesson. And if you're really smart, you're going to go on YouTube and you're going to find some cooking videos and learn how to chop vegetables better, aren't you? Well, this is not what we do with mental emotional pain. What we do with mental emotional pain is we cut our finger, and then what do? We run out and we shove our finger in our friend's face and in our mom's face and on our dad's face and everyone's face that we can find. Ow, 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 shoving our finger in the faces of everyone else, blaming and complaining as if they're supposed to be the one to grab it and do something about it. Or we just sit there and whimper and whine. Oh my God, I hurt my thumb. Oh gosh, oh my God. Meanwhile, we're bleeding all over the place. Or perhaps even more foolish, we just go, oh, I didn't hurt myself. Nothing happened here. We stick our hand behind our back. We just go, I'm not hurt. I'm fine. Matter of fact, I don't need this hand. In fact, I don't need an arm. I'll just go around the rest of my life with one arm. No big deal. And at its very worst, what do? At its very worst, what do? The hurt person who hurts people. We attack, we hurt people. And the reason we do this, the reason that we blame and complain and whimper and whine and distract and deny and hurt and attack is because we don't actually know how to integrate this pain. And by the way, this is where this dimensional consciousness idea comes in, that you are a conglomeration of different aspects of yourself, and that you have a little teenage self, a young adult self, a little child self that also has a range of emotions that are rich in your psyche. And that when you get scared, you default back to these things. And when you feel alone, you default back to these things. How many people do we see do this? They get alone, they're alone in their house, and what do? They stuff themselves full with ice cream. Why? Because that's what they did when they were a kid. That's what they did when they were afraid. We don't realize that these things are alive in us. We have got to go back and look at these parts, and we need to go back and feel and deal. Now, how do you feel and deal? How do you grab your emotional thumb? How do you bandage your emotional thumb? Well, I'm going to show you how you do it. And finally, we heal. And we do that by integrating these wounds and these trials and these struggles and essentially going, okay, I created a misguided, unconscious decision. And now, as an adult looking back at these wounds, I got to take responsibility for them and write a new story so that I can integrate them. And what we often find is that these difficult times become our most healing moments, don't they? All of us have done this accidentally, but most of us still have so many traumas and dysfunctions and trials and tribulations that we still need to clear, and they are holding us back. So how do we do this? Well, it's a three-part process that I'm going to teach you right now so that you can become your superhero, next-level human self. And I'm going to give you the tools and I'm going to give you the tactics to use with your clients. Now, what's the first part? Well, we have to change our thoughts, and there is a way to do this. And to do that, we have to uncover, examine, and integrate these hidden seed stories that are influencing the way the world shows up, the way we see the world, and the way we show up to the world. And until we do that, we can't make a difference. Now, how do we do this? I'm going to teach you. But one of the most powerful ones, I'm just going to teach you one today, is journaling. And we're going to get to that in a minute. And it's journaling that you literally can send your patients and clients home with that is powerful. I'm going to show you that in just a second. Now, that's not enough. The next thing we need to do is we need to immerse ourselves in the new feelings to teach our body a new reality. Now, I want to point something else out here. By the way, some of you may have done psychedelics. Some of you may have gone to some of these very popular seminars that, by the way, I love and go to, where individuals will teach you how to do this meditative technology where you can feel into a different way of being. But I'm going to tell you right now what I've discovered in my research and my clinical work is that if you don't do part one and disengage yourself from those old stories, part two won't work. In other words, you can't manifest, quote, manifest, that new age woo-woo term. You can't manifest anything if you don't distract, cut, go back and take these old wounds and disengage from them. Because if you don't do that, they will be following you around like a ball and chain. And so, yes, you do need to immerse yourself in the feeling. And this is where psychedelics can come in. This is where meditation can come in. And I'm going to teach you how to do that as well. just understand that the reason most people are not getting permanently better from some of these things is they're not dealing with the underlying thoughts of these old wounds, this identity structure that must come first. And then finally, the third step, we all know this. This isn't the law of attraction, it's the law of action. We know that once you get these old stories untethered and we start to practice a new immersion and feeling, we have to go out in the world and be it till we see it. We have to act as if. But the problem is, we can't act as if and be it until we see it if we keep falling back into the old story. So can you see that this stepwise process is required? So how do we do it? How do we rewrite the story? Well, I'm going to teach you one small thing you can use in your practice tomorrow. And this is a study done on what is called wet therapy, written exposure therapy. And what they did is they took PTSD individuals, post-traumatic stress disorder, one of the most difficult things to help people get over. Talk about a trauma seed story stuck in your subconscious and your nervous system. PTSD is nasty. It's intransigent. It's very difficult to deal with. So there's a gold standard called cognitive processing therapy that is used to help people deal with PTSD. Well, what was done here is that was compared against written exposure therapy that I'm going to teach you today. Now, here's the interesting thing. Cognitive processing therapy, the old way, takes 12 sessions. It takes 60 to 90 minutes. It comes with a ton of homework, and it has a dropout rate of 40%, and it's not that effective. Now, written exposure therapy is 5 sessions. It's 30 to 40 minutes. There's no homework involved, and very few people drop out. And it's just as effective, and some research, and certainly a lot of people's clinical experience is saying it's much more effective. Now, how can we do this? Here's how it's done. By the way, if you're a trainer, you can do this. If you are a chiropractor, you can do this. If you have a busy practice as an MD, you can do this because you can send them home with homework. And here's how it works. The first thing they need to do is write what happened, but not just what happened. Because if I tell you, hey, write what happened, that struggle when you were 7 years old, that traumatic event when you were 14, I want you to write what happened. What are you going to tend to do? What you're going to do is you're going to be like, well, I was in my car and I was just leaving my house and it was 7 o'clock in the morning and I was just pulling out and I forgot to put my seatbelt on and boom, I got hit. And then I had to go to the hospital. You're going to give me an ABC, XYZ type of account of this accident that you had, aren't you? That's not what you want these individuals to do. You want them to focus on the feeling of what happened. This is the equivalent of grabbing the metaphorical thumb and actually feeling it. Now, we have to be careful here, and there's one rule I want you to do when you do this with people. Have them rank on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being low energy, 10 being it's agonizing and I can't deal with it. They need to rank what is the charge of this emotional thing that they're dealing with. You don't want it to be a 10. You want it to be somewhere around a 6 to 8.5. You want it to be something that has charge in it, but you don't want it to be all the way up at a 10. What that normally means is it's too soon. So what you do is you have them rank it. What is it? Okay, it's an 8. Now, here's how you have them write it. I want you to write about what happened, but I do not want you to tell me the series of events leading up to it and the series of events leading away from it. I want you to tell me how it feels. Now, emotions are tricky because they're not logical and linear like we think. They are metaphorical. They work in symbol. They're emotional, right? They're feeling based. So what you do is you tell them to write about this emotion and you give it a tangible aspect. So you tell me, what was the texture? What's the temperature? Where was this in your body? What's the personality of it? I'll give you an example from me. I have a mother wound from when I was young because my mom, as wonderful as she is, she was volatile, dealing with her own stuff when she was young. So I remember this one day she said she was leaving and not coming back, and I was only 3 years old. Now, she did come back, but that stuck with me. And I know exactly what that feeling feels like. You know where it is? It's in my throat. It goes from my throat down to my diaphragm. It is black, maroon, dark red, spiky, angry. It's thick and viscous. I can tap into that feeling and get very sad and angry when it comes up. That's how you want people to write about this. Give their emotion texture, temperature, personality. Really allow them to get into it. And by the way, the first time they do this, guess what's going to happen? What happens if you pick at a scab? It starts to bleed, doesn't it? So what will happen is these individuals will feel an emotional kick up. You kind of want that to happen. And then the next phase, you want them to then write about how they dealt with it. What is the story they wrote about the world? What was the misguided unconscious decision they made? You know what my misguided unconscious decision was? Women are not to be trusted. Female emotions are not to be trusted. And that followed me around in my life and actually ended up destroying my marriage. This is how powerful this is. So then I get in touch with what did I make that mean? Now, as an adult, I can write a better story. And that's the final part. Now I can write in to the future and say, as a result of this having happened to me, I learned X, I learned Y, I was able to do my purpose. I was a better human as a result of having this done. Now, here's what you do. You send them home with this, and they set their timer on their device. They do 10 minutes in part 1, 5 minutes in part 2, 5 minutes in part 3. And then the next time you have them do it again, and this time they shrink the first part and increase the last part. And you have them do this over and over again. Now, in the research studies, it's typically done 5 times. But look what happens. And by the time they get to 3, 4, 5, you ask them, what is this on a scale from 1 to 10 now? And all of a sudden, because they felt it and they dealt with it, guess what happens? They start to heal from it. And guess what happens there? Their identity begins to change. They are no longer blaming, complaining, whimpering, whining, distracting, and denying, hurting, and attacking people. And a whole new world opens up for them. It is incredibly powerful. And look how simple this is. And guess how this works? Through dimensional consciousness, through identity restructuring, through this quantum metabolism, this belief structure. You can do this, and you can use this tomorrow. That's phase 1, and that has to be done first. Now, of course, there's a lot of other techniques, and those of you who certify with me will learn those techniques. The second part is to meditate on the feeling. Now, we got to break some rules here, or not rules, but misconceptions rather, regarding meditation. Now, look, down here on the left-hand side, this is mindfulness meditation. This is what most people think when I say meditation. Shut your eyes, focus on your breath, watch your thoughts go by like clouds in the sky. That is powerful. That's not what is going to be most useful here. What we want to do is what I'm trying to illustrate here in the upper left. There's 2 types of meditation that work better. Visualization meditation. This is where you essentially imagine the future life that you want in vivid detail, and most importantly, feel what it would feel like. It's like writing your own movie in your mind, watching your own movie in your mind. It's very powerful at reprogramming. And guess where a lot of these studies are done? In athletics. Athletes who imagine and focus on the feeling of winning and performing good, they end up performing better. There's actually been studies where they'll take people shooting basketballs and show that people who are imagining shooting basketballs and making baskets increase their scores almost as well as people who are actually doing the shooting. And people who are doing the shooting plus imagining are seeing really powerful effects. That's the kind of meditation that I'm talking about. But what might be even more powerful is the meditation here, which is best described as void meditation or universal meditation or nothingness meditation. Tapping in to that universal consciousness, that source consciousness where all potential and possibilities reside, and allowing that to communicate and restructure your nervous system. This also has been showing in research to be able to rewire people's immune systems even and change the way their metabolism functions by focusing on the heart chakra, for example, in compassionate meditation. What ends up happening is heart health gets better, HRV gets better, heart rate recovery gets better. It's absolutely amazing what these technologies are doing. Now, I'm going to teach you these in the certification, but let me just give you a brief idea of what this might look like. You put some music on, you tell your client, I just want you to listen to this relaxing music. By the way, you can go on Spotify, you can go on YouTube, get some music that's in the 963 hertz range. Let people listen to that frequency, because we humans, we're now also being shown through this research that we're a lot like tuning forks, and music that vibrates a particular way can make us vibrate a particular way. And when we do that, it can change our cellular physiology. And so what happens is you get them to then focus on being in the void, trying to detach themselves from themselves. The easiest way to do this, by the way, is when you're in this meditation, you essentially just go, oh, that's interesting. Jade's having a thought. This person called Jade, which isn't me, is having a thought. In other words, you dissociate from yourself. You put yourself in a place that you are the watcher, you are the observer, and this is putting you closer into source consciousness. By the way, when you certify with me, you're going to learn how to do these, guide people through these meditations, and I'm also going to give you ones right off the shelf that I have done. As a matter of fact, if you want to try these, you can go to nextlevelhuman.com, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you'll see a place where you can get some free meditations so you can try these yourself if you're not tired of my voice after this webinar. What this does is it's a lot like dress rehearsal. It's teaching the body to feel something different. Now you got your thoughts untethered, unencumbered from these old patterns, but now you need to learn that you have a habitual feeling inside of you that you need to change. So you go in and you do this activity so that this habitual feeling becomes different, so that you have a dress rehearsal in your mental, emotional sphere. This is hugely important. And by the way, think about this. Can you not give your clients, your patients homework? Could you not see yourself making money by doing guided meditations for the people you train, for the people you work with in the clinic? Of course you can. Could you not do retreats? Could you not do seminars? Could you not bring people into your gym and begin to process some of this journaling and meditation? It brings on a whole new way to think about what it is you do as a health and fitness professional. And then, of course, the final thing here, you got to take action and teach people how to take action in the right way. We think it's fake it till you make it. It is not. What does fake mean? Fake means pretend. It means that when you're watching me, I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to eat good. I'm going to work out. I'm going to do all the things. But when you're not watching, I'm going to go stuff my face with Ben and Jerry's. Faking is not what we want. It's not fake it until you make it. It's be it until you see it. And here's what we need to understand. What is being? What's the difference? Being is complete alignment in thought, feeling, choice, action. Your brain is watching you all the time, and it's judging you the exact same way you judge other people, only more harshly. If you fake it, it calls bullshit. It needs to see you doing it when people are watching, but it needs to see you, more importantly, doing it when no one's watching at all. This is what I call active living, or the as if principle. You need to be it until you see it. Now, here's a quick, easy way to teach this to your clients and patients. This person over on the left, this guy right here, this guy is a traditional actor. He gets a role in a movie and he goes in and the director says action and he starts to act the part. And then the director says cut and he stops. That's what most people are doing. They go to the gym and then they go home and, go right back to their old behavior. They go on a diet for a little bit. They go back to their old behavior. Isn't that what happens? Instead, what they need to do is become method actors. This guy, when he gets a role in a movie, he gets into the movie. He becomes the role long before he even sets on stage. So when the director says action, he's already playing the part. And when the director says cut, he keeps playing the part. And so what you want to do is teach your clients to become method actors. They are living and playing into a role. And by the way, this will not work without part one and part two. We know that. This is what we're doing, but it's the powerful way to do it because now they go, well, I don't have these stories keeping me encumbered and blocking my path. And I also know through my dress rehearsal and my meditation what this feels like. And now I'll be less afraid to take the actions. They'll become more natural. So then when I show up at Kava and, different places, I know what to get. I get chicken with vegetables. I don't eat burgers. That's not my identity. I don't go on pizza binges. I don't go on ice cream binges. That's not the role I'm playing. Because all these old stories are dismantled. They understand how to do the feeling, and they're being taught by you how to act. Now, by the way, how would you do this clinically? How could you do this tomorrow? Well, let's take this particular study. This is a study where they took arachnophobes. These are people who are terrified, absolutely terrified of what? Spiders. And what they do is they take them in and they say, okay, we're going to give you a lecture on spiders. And then we're going to bring you back next week. Actually, it's not even next week. This is 2 hours. They do all this in 2 hours. They have them watch a video. Then they have them, basically, they have them do a lecture. Then they have them watch a video. Then they have them go into a room where a tarantula is in an aquarium, blocked by glass, safe. Then they have them touch the aquarium. Then they have them touch the tarantula with a stick. And by the end of this 2 hours, guess what? Something like 80% of these individuals are actually holding these spiders. And guess what else? They're no longer afraid of spiders. How powerful is that? Why? Because their brain got to watch them become something different. Their identity went from someone who was afraid of spiders to someone who was not afraid of spiders in 2 hours. How do you do this in the real world? Well, I'm a strength and conditioning guy. I've actually got 2 of my trainers here online joining us for this. They do this too. All of you know, if you've ever done strength and conditioning, you know the concept of a PR. I can deadlift 600 pounds, right? So if I'm going for my deadlift PR, then I'm going to go for 610. It's a weight that I haven't ever done before. It's a personal record, a PR. So what you want to do is teach people how to attack personal records in their life. Let me give you a simple example of this. The fear of being alone. You got a client, a patient who's afraid of being alone. So fear PR number 1 would be like, go to a movie by yourself. Why is that a low level? Well, because it's a little bit anxiety producing when you go buy the ticket, but then the movie distracts you. And then it's a little anxiety producing when you leave the movie. But it's a pretty easy thing to do. Fear PR number 2 might be go out to dinner alone. Fear PR number 3 might be go out to dinner alone without your phone. Fear PR number 5 might be go spend a night alone at a hotel in your city. Fear PR number 20 might be go to Paris, you don't speak the language, stay a week all by yourself. Now, can you see that progression would change someone to their very core? They would not have the same identity or belief structure when that was done. Can you not do that for your patients and clients? Of course you can do that. Now, here's another one. Sharks. How would this work? Okay. Fear of sharks. Fear PR number 1, put your feet in the ocean. Fear PR number 2, go body surfing. Fear PR number 3, go deep sea fishing. Fear PR number 10, go scuba diving, learn how to scuba dive. Fear PR number 20, go down in a cage and have sharks swimming all around you, or perhaps without the cage. Now, how would that fundamentally change that human forever and ever? And if you dismantle their old stories and you teach them how to feel into being someone new and you do this type of thing, you're going to change everything about these humans. Can you see that?